lived here in the DC area now for over 35 years and have been using Unix longer than that. I first ran into VI using the source code back in about 1979. I was trying to get it to work on a PDP 1140 that had 48K of RAM and had to undefine if-def out big pieces of it to get it to fit in that small of a machine. And I just love VI. I think it's part of the way I think about computers. And so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to give a two-part presentation. The first part is about the history of VI and its clones. And then we'll take a break for questions. And then the second part is sort of an intro into Vim, which is probably the most full-featured of the clones that have grown up around it. So without much ado here, let me switch over to the screen, and I think this should all work here. And there we go. It looks like I am sharing my screen, and you should see my 42 years of VI. Now, just as a point of interest, this was written in Markdown. I use a program that will convert it into HTML, and it's called Landslide. It turns it into slides. Markdown is actually a pretty good editing language for presentations, and so I was happy that I found a tool. If I hit the H key, you'll see in the help. This is all online also. It's got JavaScript in it, and you can bring up interactive help to turn on the slides. Right now I've got them large and so on and so forth. So Markdown. I've also got it available on PDF on GitLab, and at the very end there'll be a slide that shows where you can get both the source and the artifacts of the presentation. So 42 years of VI. VI was developed by Bill Joy of Sun Microsystems fame and Chuck Haley when they were grad students at Berkeley. They ran into a gentleman from Queen's College London that had a version of ED that had been hacked to be called EM, the editor for mortals. And they took that and went through EN and EO and EP and EQ and ER, and ended up after many iterations into EX, at which point Bill lost the source, and so they stopped there. This was before source code control systems, other than maybe SCCS, and they weren't using that. It is a modal editor, which means that when you start it up, it's in command mode. Everything you type disappears, or makes the screen flash, or causes the bell to beep. And nothing ever happens. So it's one of the most frustrating editors in the world to learn because of that fact. Once you realize that you can hit a key and go into insert mode, and then the things you see start showing up on the screen, you need to learn about the escape key so you can get out of insert mode and back into command mode. There are a few other modes. There's a replace mode where what you type in overwrites what's already there. There is a EX mode or a colon mode. The capital Q puts you down into that. And in the original VI, there was an open mode because this worked on printing machines as well. EX, which is the precursor to VI, was developed on a teletypewriter. And so it was difficult to do interactive editing on a teletypewriter, but you could use open mode and it would move the head back and forth and overstrike the paper and allow you to revise things before you went on to the next slide. And then Vim itself has something called visual mode, which allows you to block out text and do all kinds of wonderful things. So VI survived the copyright wars. There were many iterations of that. The Berkeley licenses, the AT&T licenses, the whole NoVaLUG thing, the Santa Cruz operation. It went on and on. And so there were clones created because it was encumbered. It was encumbered by the AT&T license. So the Berkeley license was pretty open, but the AT&T license was not. And because of that, the clones started to get created. Now, VI came from ED. ED was the original Unix line editor and was written way back in '69 in assembly based on an editor called QED. It was then rewritten in C at Bell Labs, and it was basically the same functionality, very small, very simple. The characters were all one-letter operators. The help, there was no help. The error message was question mark. So, you know, you found if you made a mistake, it would type question mark, and you had to figure out what you did wrong without any diagnostics. VI itself was written in C in the middle 1970s, 77, 78, over a 300 baud modem. And that's one of the reasons why it's all single character commands. Things were slow. This is where the original curses library came from that would do optimization of the screen and memory before it would write out the actual cursor motion commands to repaint the screen. That all came from VI. That's where term-cap came from VI. It was all pulled out of there later and made into libraries. Bill Joy released this as EX in the first Berkeley software distribution, which was a 9-track tape. It was a great stuff. Yeah, you get your, you know, your tape of source code and you load it on your PDP-11 and it even booted. The VI used the ADM3A terminal with cursor control. Later on, a whole bunch of other terminals were added, which is where the term cap stuff came into being. But the original terminal was an ADM3A, which was a lot of fun. It looked like an old iMac. I got a picture of it in a minute. So let's see. The license restrictions were finally removed in 2002, which allowed VI to finally be released as open source. And so it's still available and you can compile it. Here's a picture of Ken Thompson and Dennis Ritchie sitting at a TTY Model 37 in front of a PDP 1170. The little round circles, there are like 8 of them in the middle, are deck tape. You can see up on top of the machine, there are some old 9-track tapes. Deck tape was like floppy disks. It was slow, it was wide, but it was offline storage and you could do it. God, I remember PDP 11s. They were a lot of fun. Okay, so before 1990, the family tree, well, Ken Thompson and Dennis Ritchie wrote ED, and George Coulouris wrote EM in Queen Mary College in London, and brought a deck tape to Berkeley and shared that with all the Berkeley kids. And Bill Joy and Chuck got a hold of that and said, wow, this is so much better than ED, and started hacking on that, and eventually ended up with EX. And then finally they added visual mode to EX when he got his hands on an ADM3A. And so by 1977, that software was pretty functional. And by 1979, they had released version 2 where it actually had a VI command. Before that, you had to start EX and then type VI when you were in EX to enter visual mode. But after 1979, they realized that people wanted to be in visual mode. And that was it until 1987 when Stevie came out. Back in the Usenet days, people would post source code. And so for the Atari ST, Tim Thompson put out a tiny VI editor called Stevie, a VI clone in the public domain. And that got ported to the OS2 and to Amiga by another guy and posted to CompSource as Unix. And that was it. I remember running Stevie on a CPM machine in the 80s just because I had to have something, and you know, yeah, there you go. So here's Bill Joy in his later years, and it was actually a fairly prescient comment. He recognized that VI had its limits, and it was written for a 16-bit machine. And it wasn't extensible. Yeah, you can put macros into it, abbreviations and stuff, but it didn't have the kinds of things that people expect in software today. And he was comparing it to Lisp because Emacs is extensible. And the thing is that Emacs cost money. You had to pay $100, $150, $200 to get an Emacs tape. And Unix was free if you were a university. So everybody ran VI. And the Emacs was sort of like whatever. This is the original ADM3A keyboard layout. If you look at compared to your normal keyboard, first of all, the escape key is the big key on it. There is no caps lock key. There are things that you would never see anywhere else, like here is. But the big thing is that the arrow keys were H, J, K, L. Control H, Control J, Control A, Control L were the arrow keys. And this turned out to be where the HJKL for VI motions came from, which if you learn VI, you're really familiar with that. Your hand is pretty much in the home position there, ASDF, JKL, semicolon, so it's a little bit of a reach for H, but not much. And so you move the cursor around without your hands leaving the keyboard. Of course, this was all before mice, and nobody ever saw a mouse except for Xerox and Park and like that. That's what an ADM3A looks like. I think it looks like an iMac from the original iMac days. I actually managed to use some of these when I was in university, and I was happy to get a better terminal because these things were primitive. The DEC VT52, the VT100s, much better, and so when we finally got those, we were pretty happy. All right, the original documentation is still online. If you want a good read on basically how to use VI, this is still probably the best reference that you can find. Introduction to Display Editing with VI. It hasn't changed much. Gunnar Ritter, when the software was open sourced in 2002, went and corrected some of the macros because there used to be a bug where they stuck an extra chapter in, and nitty-gritty details was chapter 8. But that's not how it was written. That was just like a macro problem, and so he went and fixed that and cleaned it up. And so this document is actually still very readable. It's a pretty brief intro. It's enough for you to learn to use the editor, but not to master it. And you know that can be a good read. It's nice that it's still out there. After 1990, things started exploding. We were still in Usenet days then, but there was Vile, which was Emacs mode of VI. There was Elvis, which came out for Minix. There was Vim. Vim was based on Stevie. Bram Molinar took Stevie and just started going to town on it and put his own license onto it. There was NVI, which was based on Elvis. I actually worked with Keith Spotsnick here in Reston before he went off to Berkeley, and he's quite something. He's the only programmer I've known that was a Golden Gloves boxer. Quite a man. Yeah, and so he took NVI because this was before the Berkeley software was unencumbered. It still had the AT&T license tucked into it, and he wanted a version that they could give away. So he took Elvis and turned that into NVI. In 1995, Bruce Perens wrote BusyBox and put in a tiny VI. The whole idea of BusyBox was this could be a floppy disk-based Linux where you stick a floppy in, it has everything on it, will run off the floppy. And so BusyBox was the command that had just about everything in one program. Including a tiny little version of VI. You'll know you're in BusyBox VI when nothing you want to do works. You find that out pretty quickly. That the basic stuff works, but there's nothing fancy. And finally, in 2002, Caldera unencumbered the traditional VI. They took the rest of the AT&T stuff and turned it into a BSD license. And so now that's available. But by that time, there were a lot of clones. Vim was in full force. NVI, everybody in the Berkeley world was using NVI. So traditional VI never really took off after that. Then there was the license wars around BusyBox, where people started suing for GPL purposes, and Bruce Perez didn't like that, so there was a fork, and Rob Landy made a fork called Toybox, which is got a different license. It's not GPL, OBSD. There's been a fork of Vim called NeoVim. I use NeoVim oftentimes. It's a little smaller than Vim, but it pretty much works the same way. And the most recent one I've heard of is a version in Rust called Sodium. I haven't had a chance to play with that, but just trying to be complete about the family tree. Here's a nice drawing that just sort of shows you how QED, spawned ED, spawned EM, spawned EX, spawned VI, and then 10 years later, more than that, 13 years later, we got traditional VI. And then Stevie kicked off Vim, kicked off NeoVim, and just to show you a little bit of the timeline of everything. Yeah, so VI. VI is actually still small. Again, it was built for 16-bit computers, and not all of them had 64K of RAM. The famous Bill Joy quote, 640K should be enough for anybody. If you had a PDP-11, you had 64K of text and 64K of data, because it was not a classical, well, it was a classical von Neumann machine with a separate instruction and data space. But most of the PDP-11s didn't have that kind of memory management. If you had 48K, you had 48K. And trying to get VI to fit in that was a real challenge. So it's pretty small. Considering how small it is, it's amazing that it does what it did. Yeah, okay, now, obviously, computing has come a long way since the 70s, and we have character sets, and we have international encodings, and we have 32-bit Unix, and now we have 64-bit Unix, and yeah, so it's come a long way. But VI is still very small. Let's see, Bruce. Bruce wrote Tiny VI along with everything else. I mean, he's got everything that Unix needs to do in user space in one program. And there was a whole bunch of wars around the GPL back then, GPL lawsuits, license controversies. Bruce wasn't happy with it. He didn't like what they were doing, but what can you do? It's open source. And so BusyBox VI, because it's wedged into BusyBox, is real small. It doesn't have much undo. There are no colon commands. The dot command only does one or two things, lots of limited set options. There's just not much to it. However, if you are in an environment like OpenWRT, that BusyBox is the default, you find that it's better than ED. Okay. All right, and then Vim is the most comprehensive current implementation. Vim stands for VI Improved. It's a clone. It works on many operating systems. I've used it everywhere I go. I'm very happy with Vim. And so pretty much that's where we are with Bram. That's Bram Olinar, who wrote Vim. And so I'm going to take a pause from talking at you, and we can have some questions here. All right, and let me just move things around a little so I can see him. All right. Okay, John, so you can unmute people and let them raise their hands.
Everybody is unmuted, so feel free to ask if you have questions.
Right, the 640K quote was Bill Gates. What I'm saying is that Bill Gates said, 640K should be enough for anybody. But meanwhile, Bill Joy was sticking stuff into 48K. Yeah, so I'm just saying, Yeah. Source tape, yeah. Cards, no. Tape, deck tape, 9-track tape.
Okay. Hey guys, I use Vim for everything, and I've never checked out NeoVim. Does it make sense for me to check it out? Is it any better than Vim, or should I stick with Vim?
It's very similar to Vim. It's got a Lua interpreter in it. If you're familiar with LUA, the programming language to expand it, the fact is they're very similar. It's NeoVim is just a fork. If you're familiar with one, the other one works almost the same. They can share scripts. It's more a question of what you find in your environment. I find NeoVim is smaller. So in tight environments, I install it because Vim is large, but they work alike.
Okay, I think anyway that using Unix as my IDE is the smallest IDE I can use, because most other developers will be on, you know, IntelliJ and stuff like this. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you for your question, Alex. I really appreciate you turning out. We have other questions? Anybody got anything they'd like to say? All right. Well, I'd like to get an idea of how many people use VI. I mean, I know there's so many IDEs these days. You know, if you use Eclipse or if you use the Microsoft Code visual stuff. I use VI every day. I've used VI every day for over 40 years. Sometimes on vacation. I don't know.
So I use Vim every day for years, and whenever I try a normal IDE, then I will switch back to Vim. The only issue nowadays is that more and more stuff you have to edit code online. For example, when I write smart contracts quickly for Ethereum blockchain network, then the best and the quickest IDE is Remix, which is online. So then, but when I use it, I really suffer, because after 5 minutes, my hand falls apart from using a mouse. So I really dream about going back to Vim. That's all. So I use Vim for everything, from coding everything from Java through Node.js through Bash, all of it.
Well, Vim is great for coding. You can do a lot of things with Vim that you can't do with VI. It has plugins. It knows about syntax. It will highlight. It allows you to split your screen and to have tabs. And we'll get into that in the second half of the presentation. I consider Vim to be a programmer's editor, whereas I consider VI to be a text editor. And there's a difference. With a programmer's editor, you want access to code knowledge. Now, VI did have tags, and that was actually very useful, and that's been carried forward into the other editors, except for maybe VisiBox. Tags allows you to cross-reference your function interfaces. Originally, it was just for C, but it's been extended to other languages. And to hit a keystroke in VI and take you to the cross-reference. So it allows you to jump around your code and follow logical references without having to know where they are. And we will cover that in the second half. All right, I'm getting a lot of good feedback here. I really appreciate it, people. Yeah, Vim, yeah, NeoVim. These are programmers editors. VI was a text editor. I actually taught secretaries to use VI. Back in the early 80s, because they were typesetting, and so they needed a visual editor to key in their macros for typesetting, and then we would run tech on that. So it can be learned. The fact that there's no feedback, you just have to. It's like touch typing. You can't look at your fingers. You have to look at what's happening on the screen. Yeah, that just. You learn after a while that if you're looking at your fingers, you're not seeing what's going on at the screen, and you're doing something you didn't think you should be. All right, great feedback on people. I really appreciate the chat. I'd like to continue on with a little bit more now. What I've got for the second half of the presentation is a little denser. The history was good, but the second half, let's see what I'm going to do. I think I'm going to have to flip my screens around.
And while you're doing that, just to let everyone know, you have everyone's been muted again, and only Sam and I can unmute ourselves. So If you have any questions, again, please feel free to use the chat and I will interrupt.
There we go. I needed to do that. And I need to do, I've got to move my screens around. I want to share them. Okay. So that's Bram, and he coded Vim. If you really need to use a mouse, there is a GUI called gvim. Here's a screenshot of a gvim screen with the version command. This is how you know you're running any given version of VI. Most of them have a version command. We'll try a couple of them, but Vim tells you that it's Vim when you start it up, and if you do version, it tells you how it was compiled and all the sorts of options that are turned on. In terms of space, again, I'm a developer, so code size matters to me. I build all these things on Gentoo, which I've since wiped and put Debian on. But anyway, if you look at the size of the Vim is huge. It's 2.5 meg of text. That's big to me. BusyBox with everything in it is smaller than Vim. VI itself, that's the original VI, is only 226K of code in a 386 64 machine. I mean, that's 64-bit pointers and stuff. Back in the 32-bit days, it was smaller because the pointers were half the size. Back in the 16-bit days, it was smaller because the pointers were a quarter of the size. And then there's NVI, which is actually, it's got its own shared libraries, and so you have to add them up. It's still bigger than VI. It's about twice as big. So VI is very small. If you have a tight resource machine and you need a visual editor, then VI is not bad. It doesn't have all the wonderful things that Vim has in it, but it is VI. Okay, so what we're going to talk about a little bit, if you're familiar with Vim, the basic stuff, if you're familiar with VI, the basic stuff will be review. If you're not, it'll be mysterious. And I'm going to go over some of the things I think are important to know. The help command, Vim tutor is a gas if you've never run that. How to set up your vimrc a little bit. The basic idea of command grammar, and then some of the editing commands, some of the advanced stuff, plugins, what I use. I've tried to reference help pages because in Vim you can indeed have help. What I'm going to have to do is probably switch my share so that I'm able to bring things up. But the one thing that distinguished Vim from VI was help. VI did not have help. ED did not have help. BusyBox doesn't have help. Vim has help. Vim has a lot of help. If you ever finish reading all of Vim help and mastering it, you're an amazing person. There is more help there than anybody can digest. Okay, let's see. I think what I need to do is to just bring up another window here. This is probably going to look funny. Did my screen get smaller? Probably. And I need to stop sharing and then share again. Okay, share screen. This time I'm going to share the desktop. There we go. Okay, so yeah, ideally you would see a Firefox on the left and a window on the right. And so if I run Vim, it just tells you that it's version 8.2, and it gives you enough prompt to say help. So, the biggest thing you can do help on is help. Now that works, help. And it gives you a split screen, and it shows you, what the help command is and how to use it. And let's see, I think I'll just make that a little bigger. There we go. And so you can actually see how the help works. Now, the fact that this is a split screen is something we cover later. And Vim has layers and layers of complexity like that. So even though I quit that, I'm still in the editor. I just quit the help. And so it takes me a couple to do it. And so that's the help command. I don't know. I'm not getting feedback, so I don't know how well this is being received, but I assume that you saw that. The Vim tutor can actually be run from the command line, and what it does is it brings you into a file which the file contents tell you how to edit the file. This is actually pretty entertaining if you feel like you're rusty in VI, then run the Vim tutor and it'll help. If you type help tutor, it will tell you how to run the Vim tutor. It won't run it for you, but it'll tell you how to do it. And that can be quite entertaining. So if I open up a window and make it a little bigger, I'm in resize mode, but they're not resizing. I must have lost a mouse. There we go. Sorry. Okay, and so if I run Vim tutor, I cannot see my screen. Then it brings you up in a file that says welcome to the Vim tutorial, and it shows you how to move the keys around with the H and J and the K and the L and things like that. So this is actually pretty useful for trying to get somebody to use VI who has never ever seen it before. It does eventually show you how to scroll around and how to exit and how to move and delete and things like that. So that's Vim tutor, and it's pretty useful. There is a Vim adventure, which is a game that you can play, which starts you out with the HJKL keys and eventually teaches you the word keys and the other sorts of motion operators. And you know, if you're really bored, Vim adventure is pretty funny. Yeah, okay. Let's just make sure we're big and that we have the line numbers. All right. So all the commands in VI and Vim have a syntax, and it's, in most cases, it's some sort of a motion operator followed by a modifier with an optional count. And once you grasp this, VI all of a sudden makes sense. It's an editing language that uses single characters and numbers. So if I do 3G, that moves the cursor to the third line. If I do 30 vertical bar, that moves the cursor to column 30. And so that's your primitive motion operators. You could do 3L or 3H or 3J or 3K, and it'll go up and down and left and right. But there are many, 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 many motion operators. And this is like learning a new language. Most of them are mnemonic, but they ran out of letters in the alphabet, and there are more motion operators than there are letters. So after a while, the mnemonics are a bit of a stretch, but the original ones made a lot of sense. So for example, we have count motion modifier. Here's a motion operator F, which is find, which takes an optional count, but it requires you to have a modifier after it that tells you what command you're looking for. So if you're on a line and you do F semicolon, it will move the cursor to the next semicolon. If you do 3F semicolon, it will move the cursor to the third semicolon. Now, the reason these motion operators become powerful is because you can combine them with edit operators. And so you can delete up to the third semicolon, or you can yank up to the third semicolon, things like that. Now, you can include searches as part of your motion operators. So if you do a / regular expression carriage return, it's going to find the next carriage, the next pattern that matches your regular expression. Regular expressions are a class in themselves, and I'm just going to assume that you have heard of them and at least are aware that they exist. So you can give a regular expression a count. If you do 2 / regular expression, it will therefore find the second one. You can do Y / regular expression and it will yank. You can do D/regular expression, it will delete. You can do C/regular expression, it will change up to that motion operator. And then there are file operators. I'm not really going to go into them much. Those are things like write and read and stuff like that. But the idea is that there is a grammar. And so the way that edit operators work, some of them have motion operators and some of them don't. But most of them work on registers. Now, VI remembers, or Vim remembers, when you yank something or delete something or change something, and it saves it in a register. In addition, you can name registers, A through Z. So if you yank something into a register, or if you name a register and delete something, it remembers that. But the edit operators are the ones, these are the primary ones I've listed here. You have replace and delete lines and delete chars and changes, and then DD is a shorthand for delete the current line, and YY is a shorthand for yank the current line. Yeah, and so there are a lot of motion edit operators that don't take a motion to them. They just have a count. And then you have the edit operators that take a motion, like D, you have to say what you're going to delete. Delete word, you know, delete line, delete character, delete to some semicolon. You know, let's see, I have quote A3D, right curly, which is into the register A, delete 3 paragraphs, but it saves them in the register A. Now, I know that just speaking this stuff to you and not showing you how it works is just like not really good feedback, but I'm trying to go over the grammar and show you that there is a syntax, and that once you understand that this is the editing language, then that begins to help with you putting the rest of it together. And then really there aren't that many edit operators because there aren't that many edit operations. You can change or delete or replace or yank or put, but there are a lot of motion operators. And so some of the basic motion operators, most of them take account. I don't have time to go through all of these, but the idea is that there are a large number of motion operators, words, characters. These are all the basic primitive characters or lines. You can go to line numbers. You can go to the middle of the screen. You can go to the top of the screen, the bottom of the screen. You can go to the beginning of the line. You go to the end of the line. These are all motion operators, and they combine with the edit operators, as I showed previously. There are more motion operators. These are the scrolling operators. You can scroll up lines. You can scroll down lines. I never tried editing with a scrolling operator. I wonder if that works. There are pattern matching operators. There are matching parentheses and bracket operators. There are search operators, forward and backward, previous. There are word operators. Original VI had the idea of words. They eventually added the idea of capital words, which are just non-blank words. But the original words were letters separated by letters, digits, and underscores. A logical word, like you were editing text. But when you get into programming, all this punctuation is part of your word, and so there are capital words. So you use capital W to just skip on white space instead of on all the punctuation. And there are other motion operators, sentences, paragraphs, sections. A lot of these were based on the original TROF macros because back in the 70s and 80s, VI was used to typeset with, and people would write TROF commands or NROF commands, which are dot character. And so there are a lot of the section paragraph is looking for those macros. But in addition, the right curly and left curly brace were set up for C function definitions, where a section was defined as a left curly brace on the beginning of a line. And so I often find myself searching in my C programs for C programs that have curly braces at the beginning of the line. When I format my C programs, I make sure that I start the function with a curly brace on the beginning of the line so that the VI editing commands work. This is a case where the tool has shaped the product and not the other way around. Yeah, more editing operators. This just goes on and on. When you look at VI, the change, the delete, the nice thing about these is that it remembers them. So if you delete a word, you can then put it back somewhere else. If you delete a character, you can put it back somewhere else. To switch two characters, you use the X key to delete the character and then the P key to put it right back, but it puts it back after it was, and so it reverses two characters. So if I find myself typing XP just to switch two characters a lot. Let's see. And then we have the registers. Again, when you yank, when you cut, when you copy, when you delete, when you change, all this goes into a register. If you don't name a register, it goes into the unnamed register, which is the current register. And when you delete something, it remembers the last 10 deletes, 0 through 9. So you can put the third delete back by doing a quote 3P, and it will take the third thing you deleted in a stack and put it back. There are the 26 named registers, so you can edit into a register and it will remember the text. And then Vim has all these other registers, the expression register, the black hole register, the last search pattern register. It remembers all these things. And if you want to see what they are, you can type set all and it will show you. Let's just see if we can wrap this up. Okay, we have visual mode commands. This is how you block things out so that you can do operations inside of a line across multiple lines. I use this for moving columns around for things like that. It turns out that this was one of the biggest features in Vim for a long time was the visual mode commands. I mean, God knows he's added so much later. And that is pretty much the basics. So let's just do a quick visual. Let's see. Presentations. I'm going to go to 42 years of VI. And I have, oh man, I cannot see the screen. Diff demo. I need to make my font brighter. When I share the screen, it goes dim for some reason. All right, so what I've got here is I've got a README. And you can see that when I go into VI, nothing that I type shows up on the screen. Let's just make this a little bigger. That's better. Okay. All right, so motion operators. If I type the J key, it goes down. If I type the down arrow, it goes down. If I type the carriage return, it goes down. These are all motion operators. If I type the right curly brace, it skips to the next blank line, using that as a paragraph. So right curly brace from this position would take me all the way down to the last blank line, right curly brace. So I should be able to yank that Y right curly brace, and I have now yanked that section. And if I go down to the end, capital G, and I put it, it just puts that section. So that's a typical VI section copy where what I type there, I'm going to undo that. I move my cursor to the start of the section. I type Y right curly brace. It yanked 11 lines. Now I've got verbose turned on, and so it told me that it yanked 11 lines. And then I can go down to the bottom. Capital G takes you to the end of the line. Capital Shift L also takes you to the bottom of the screen. And if I do a P, it puts back the default register. All right, now I could have yanked that into a named buffer if I did a a quote A Y right curly brace. Now I've got this in the A buffer. And if I look at set all and we start going down, we will see the registers. Did I miss it? Probably. No. It's supposed to show me the register. No, live demos, you never know what you're going to get. Error format. Match pairs for time. No, it didn't show me the buffers. There's a way to see them. I'll have to look that up. Okay, so that's a little bit about the basic operators, and you can come out here and if I do a D capital G, it's gone, or I can do an undo. If I do a right white curly brace, it's gone. If I do a DD, it takes one line, and then I can repeat that with the dot command and go down one at a time. All right, so I'm going to quit out of here, and we're going to go look at some of the things that I find Vim really adds. Again, that was all basic, and if you're not used to basic, then what we're going to do is go on to advanced. So I tried to put these in an order that made sense to me because there's just so much with Vim. And the best thing you can do is just run the help command and start reading the help, because the user manual is in the help command. But one of the things that you need to know about is your Vim RC, and that's your Vim startup commands. And this is where you put the things you want to do over and over again. It's basically your profile, your .profile for Vim RC. You can type :help Vim RC, which I put on the slide to show you what. This is a pretty simple example. I'm mapping the F7 function key to run the XXD command. I'm mapping the F8 function key to run the XXD command. What that does is that takes a binary file and puts it into a hex edit mode, allows me to edit it in hex mode, and then reverse it back to a binary file. That's a pretty clever trick. To unpack that, the F7 key runs : $!XXD carriage return. Colon introduces a command. Percent says percent is shorthand for $1, which means for every line in the file. And then the $!XXD says run this command, send every line in the file as a standard output to this command, and replace it with the output of the command. And so, interestingly enough, what that does is that runs XXD. It gives you a hex dump of what you were looking at. So this is how you can edit binary files with Vim. And then the F8 key reverses that. It says : $!XXD-R. And one of the nice things about the hex dump command, which I believe comes with Vim, is that if you have edited the text part of it, there's a hex dump on the side. It doesn't pay attention to that. It repackages the file back into the original based upon what you had edited on the main text. So I can show you that. I mean, this is hilarious. All right. Open up a window, make it bigger. Uh, 42 years of diff. I missed it. All right, so if I cat my Vim RC, I indeed have the hex edit in F7 and F8 mapped. I've also got Vundle, which is my plugin manager. We'll talk about plugins later. The reason I have a plugin here is because I want autosave, which has saved my neck more than once. And I've got also some Python syntax and things like that. But That's because I write Python. Okay, so if we edit readme.old, the F7 function key should indeed put it into hex mode. And you can see that we are now in hex mode. And then I can go over and change that to a 2, and I can run F8 and it will write it out. And I change the character to the previous one, F8, and it writes it out. And you can see it's now a moved 42 years of VI. All right. And so there we go. And let's just look and see what it should have been. It should have been a pound sign, and it is now a quote pound sign. All right. Okay, that is Vim diff, which is another good thing. We'll get to that maybe if we have time. All right. This is probably a good place. I've been talking for a long time for me to take a break and to see if there are any questions before I get into anything more advanced. All right, so let me switch that over.
Okay.
John, you can open it up for questions.
Yep, to go with that, everyone can now unmute themselves to ask questions. So feel free.
Yeah, I hope that wasn't overwhelming. A bit of a fire hose, really. 14 new messages. Wow, I'm way behind here. Oh, left side is gray.
Yeah, when you left that first split screen, it kind of grayed the screen, and I'm not sure how to fix that, so I couldn't stop you.
All right, mapping a F key to set paste. Yeah, there you go. Mapping is very powerful. Red command, see all the registers. Thank you. Yes. Maybe stop for a second. I struggle to see a bit. Okay, so I was having some sort of Zoom problem 10 minutes ago. Did I fix it? Did it come back?
It went the whole way, but I mean, for me, it was legible, and you'll probably still be able to see it in the meetup or in the recording, so it should be fine.
Okay, I don't have any way of getting notifications while I'm in the presentation because you've got things.
Yeah, like I said, I don't know how you could have fixed it. Otherwise, I'd have interrupted you. I've been watching the chat, so.
Yeah, I would have probably had to reshare. Okay, so I see one question. Somebody got me on the .reg is fine. We'll be talking about scripting. No, probably not, Shmuel. Okay, and so I need to be more careful. I'm flipping around in the window manager, opening and closing windows, and I think it's confusing Zoom. All right, yeah, I did mention the dot operator very briefly. The dot repeats the previous command, and yeah, that can be very powerful. I put it in macros a lot. One of my favorite macros is I define capital K to be next dot, which searches and changes. So it's like an interactive search and replace. And I'll hit the K key, and it'll do repeat the previous search, repeat the previous change. So a lot of times I do map K and dot. Yeah, well, that's private. Now, how do I get out of private?
If you click next to the name, there's an arrow down. Click on that.
I'll send chat to everyone. Okay, there we go. Okay, so yeah, I got it. I'm not a Zoom in dot. Okay, so that's a typical interactive macro that I'll just. The K key is not used for much. I think it looks something up somewhere, and so I'll often map that to a interactive search and replace, and so that repeats the previous search. Actually, usually what I map it to is .in. So it repeats the previous change and then searches to the next one. And so if you don't like it, you hit N and go to the one after that, and then K to, or I should map it to Y. Yeah, Y and N. All right. Let me try sharing the screen better. Yeah, and maybe this time it will work. and we'll see what happens. Share screen.
All right. Do you want me to
Desktop.
mute everyone again?
Well, people have been really good. Why don't you leave them open so I can get interrupted? I really miss the feedback.
Okay.
And so, like, I would like to know if you can see my screen.
It is still grayed out.
It is grayed out. Why is this grayed out?
I know it for me. It's gray with like a white bar right above your Google Calendar, Meetup, and GitLab tabs.
Okay, I don't know how to get that not
Okay.
gray
Stop sharing for a second.
because it's not gray now.
Now move your Zoom screen to see if maybe there's a window behind it that it was asking you to click OK or something. If that makes sense.
Hard to know. This window manager doesn't let you in screens very well.
I don't have my head away.
Hi.
Mom, I don't have
Let's see if this works better. Let's see if this works better.
my yeah.
Is that white now?
That is much better. Yes.
Okay, yeah. I guess it's because I have two physical displays and I had Zoom on the left display, and so it'd get confused. Okay.
Sam,
And Bill,
you hit
you
F11 or 12. Hit F11 or 12 to get rid of the bar at the top.
Let's see. Yeah, that seems to work. All right.
Thank you, Phil.
Hey, let me share a screen again. I'm going to just share the entire desktop. No, now it graded out. Zoom. I'm able to share the program.
Try that maybe. Just share the.
And we'll live with that. And yeah, the F11 was a good idea. Thank you. That helps some. All right. Now I've got, it's cut off the bottom. I don't know. Not real good with Zoom.
I see the whole screen. I do see a green border, which is probably what you're seeing on yours, but I do see your whole screen. I'm not
You see
sure
line number on the bottom?
though.
You see the 33, 35 on the bottom?
No, well, sorry. Yes, I do see the 33/53.
53, yeah, okay.
The one thing I'm not sure of is if the whole thing will show up on the recording, but if not.
Hey, we'll find out.
Looks
Okay,
good
so-
here, and I'm on a small display.
All right, thank you. Let's see, we just left vimRC. I'll go back and cover some of that with the Python plugins and things that we have a chance to get to it, because it's already 11 and plugins are advanced. But you know, there are Git repositories of Vim plugins to do code editing, and they can probably explain it better than I can. This was supposed to be a high-level briefing, mountaintop. I am covering a lot of the advanced stuff because Vim is quite advanced, and so I wanted to go through and just introduce the fact that it can do these things and give some examples, but by no means am I going into depth on any of this stuff. That's why I have the :help command at the top of the slide. You should really check this out yourself. Vim help uses tags. So if you go help on something, you're using tags already, and so you can use the tag keys to pop the tag stack, to go up and down the tag stack. Anytime you go to something, you can hit the tag, which is control right square bracket when your cursor's on the tag, and it will take you to the tag. If you're in help, the tags are defined. But you can define your own tags for your own programming languages. I use universal C tags, which is a fork of exuberant C tags. It seems to understand a lot of different programming languages, and it will build an index file with regular expressions. The syntax of that index file is the tag name, which is what you're going to be clicking the tag on. The file that's in, that can be a relative or absolute path name. The EX command to search for that in the file, it isn't necessarily a regular expression. It can be whatever it has to be And then if you're using exuberant tags or extension fields to do fancy things. You can start Vim or VI with a -T tag option. It'll take you right to the tag. So programming VI-T main will take you to your main definition if you've set up an index file. You can do command line tag, tag, and pop, or you can use Control-T to pop a tag and Control right square bracket to follow a tag. You can split the window. We'll talk about splits later, and leave the one window where it was and position the new one at the tag, so you can be looking at two sides vertically. I guess there's an H split and a V split. You probably have to do help tags to find that out. Tags are very useful for programming. They are used in help, and so once you understand that, then you can go up and down the help with tags. So it's worth knowing how it works. Let's see. I use the make command a lot. When I would be developing this presentation, I'm editing it in the markup in Vim, and I set up a make file, and I would type :make, and it would make the presentation, or I type :make test, and it would make the presentation and push it to the test server, and so that's useful. I could not get the error file to work. The documentation says it makes an error file. I couldn't get that to work. Supposedly, if there are makes with your error, then Vim knows how to go through the error file and position you to the errors. And that's what the documentation says. I have not been able to make that work, but I haven't tried. Text object. Now, here is where the motions get more sophisticated in Vim. There is the concept of inside. We have inside commands in Vim, sort of like the hidden menu in Starbucks. If you're in the middle of a word, you can delete that word by doing DIW. You can yank that word by doing YIW. It also understands sentences. Sentences are defining as ending with a period. It also understands paragraphs. Paragraphs are defined by having a blank line after them. So you can, if you're in the middle of a paragraph, you don't have to position yourself to the beginning of it to manipulate it as a paragraph. If you're in the middle of it, you use IP or AP. It understands XML, HTML, and I've got some examples on the next slide about the XML tags, which is pretty sophisticated. Actually, I thought I had an example. Maybe I'm mistaken. All right. Yeah, okay, change case isn't really that advanced, but Vim made it advanced. Here it is. Here's the HTML example I was thinking of, the XML example. You can either change the case using the I'm using the ~AT and ~IT commands here. We have two examples. Say we have a line which is lowercase tag, lowercase text, lowercase end tag, and we set the tilde operator on, and we're in the middle of the tag. If we do ~AT, tilde changes the case at the cursor and also changes the case of the text inside the tag. Whereas ~IT, only changes the text inside the tag, but doesn't change the tag itself. So the A is around and the I is inside. That's the way you think of the macros. When you look at the inside commands, the A is around and the I is inside. And so there's around and inside words, sentences, paragraphs, blocks, parentheses, functions, quotes. It's just, this is complicated enough to be in the advanced, but it's also very useful because it's a single modifier, the I or the A modifier, to all the motion operators that you already knew. And I picked the XML operator to demonstrate that because it's very clear what the difference between inside and around is. And it's the same thing with quotes and some of the other sorts of stuff. So tilde change case is truly advanced. We have the increment and decrement operators. These are kind of amusing, but I mean, why, who cares if you can increment or decrement? It's just as easy to replace it. But in visual mode, it'll increment or decrement a series of highlighted lines. So if you have just a list of numbers and you highlight that in visual mode, selecting all but the first one, and you press Control A, it's going to increment them as a series. And that's actually fairly powerful. It'll also decrement. I mean, yeah, okay, gee whiz. Somebody really must have fun coding that. I like indenting. Being a programmer, I used to use the indent program, but Vim makes it possible to use the equal command to run the indent program. It has its own built-in internal formatting, but you can define a function if you want to use an external program. And so it will indent whatever motion you give it. Typically with C, it's matching parentheses. Or if you're in a block, you can use the inside equal I curly brace, and it will indent the block you are in, which is kind of fun. So here we have a slide which is building on a previous thing, the inside and around modifiers. Folding. Now, all of a sudden there's a hierarchy of ways to look into things. You have to understand that Vim works on buffers, and there can be multiple views into a buffer, and there can be multiple buffers on your window. And you can have your window split into multiple screens, and you can have multiple tabs across, and all of this complexity can be saved so that the next time you start up, it remembers where you were. To begin the layering here of this Vim complexity, we're going to start looking at folding. Folding is a way of collapsing a set of lines, like you click the little left arrow and the thing expands, and you click it and they collapse, and Vim folds are exactly that. And so you can use the motion operator with the Z command. So Z fold motion operator, I guess that P should be capital, folds a set of lines. I found a typo. And then you can open the fold and close the fold with ZO and ZC. If you want, you can map those to function keys. Folds can be nested, so you can have a fold within a fold. You can reduce the nesting, so you can open them gradually. You can fold them more gradually. You can turn off all the folds. Folds actually show up when you do Vim diff, and so it's quite useful to understand that's what they are. And I'm going to try and give that as an example in a little bit. Okay, so then you have windows. When you run the help command, it splits your window. When you run the Vim diff command, it splits your window. You can split your window. When you run the split tag command, it splits your window. You can split your window anytime you want. And then you have to know how to manipulate these split windows with the Control W command. So Control W, S splits a window. Control W, V splits a window vertically. And then you have to know how to switch between windows. And so you have Control, well, to close the windows, Control WQ, Control WC, all the commands, :hide, :only, :quit. Control WJ, Control W, Control J, Control W down arrow key takes you to the window below you. Control UK takes you to the window to the left, so you can move one window. So that becomes the active window, and that's where your editing commands work. And then, in addition to windows, there are, well, let's see, the Vim splits the screen. I was showing Vim diff splits the screen with windows. So let's go ahead and let me see if I can share an example of that to try and show you what's going on. I don't know what I'm doing anymore. I've lost my Zoom.
I still see you.
I'm trying to figure out. Yeah, what are you looking at?
I see you.
Okay, I've lost my my Zoom client. That's interesting. I don't know how to get that back. Let's just see if it's here. You see me.
Mm-hmm.
F11. That's probably the full screen. There it is. Ah, okay, and that full screen got me. Haha. All right, I was going to try and share a, not really great with Zoom. I was going to try and share an example of diff. So let me zoom that to 6 and open up a window and share the window. Okay, and hopefully you see a nice big screen. You see an X term with a, all right. And so that's, let me make a bigger font. There we go. 88 by 27, that's fine.
Yep, we should be able to read it well.
Yeah, this should be readable. Okay, I've got two files here. And if you just diff them, you know, they're different. But if I do vim diff on those two files, it splits the screen, folds a bunch of lines, and highlights the differences in color. All right, so now I can edit these, and it sometimes redoes the diff and sometimes doesn't. But what I was going to show you was the fold down here. You can see the plus is a fold. All right, and I've got my cursor set up to actually underline the line that I'm on, because sometimes the cursor gets lost, and so I've got a whole horizontal line to let me know. That's just a set command in the RC. I found that happy. If I'm at the fold and I do ZO, it opens the fold. And I think ZC closes it. So that's what a fold looks like. And that's actually fairly nice, but I was just showing you that Vim actually uses this in Vim diff. And so there you go. Now those lines are all the same, and it obviously picked some reason to ZO open. It's some reason to fold them. I don't know. We'll leave it folded. Okay, and so down here, I'm in here, expects all. As you see, as I edited it, the line went purple because now they diff the same. And so Vim diff gives you a way to, I just did undo there. Vim diff gives you a way to edit two files together. Now, the window command is Control W, and then L takes me to the other window. And I could do the same thing on that side. And so now I made the lines the same, and so the highlight goes the same. Or I can go up here and ZO opens the fold, it opens them on both sides. So Vim diff actually is pretty smart about the split screen, and there's a whole diff mode that needs some understanding, but it works pretty interesting, and I would consider that advanced Vim. Now you can close the one with the Control W Q command to close the window, or the colon quit, or the colon hide, or the colon close. So if I do a colon hide, that closed the one on the right, and now I'm left in the one on the left. And so that showed the Vim diff command, and it showed the fold command and the split window. All right, so let me go try and share. Where did the web go? I've lost my Firefox. There it is. So many virtual desktops. There we go. Okay, so I'm going to go on and try and run through some more of these slides.
Sam, somebody put in the chat, interesting piece of VIM history. The Z key was chosen for fold management because it looked like 3 pieces of paper fan folded.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, I tell you, we've got some real good people here. Yeah, I do not know everything. I do not pretend to know everything. I really love that that kind of stuff. That's the kind of stuff that makes me love NoVaLUG. Yeah. All right. Thank you, John. Thanks for sharing that. Okay, so Vim, sort of trying to tie together the folding and the windows, and then Vim Diff does that. Also Help doesn't do the folding, but it does the windows. And then we have tab pages. So in Vim, just like we have tabs on our browsers, you can have tab pages on your Vim, and they could be the same file or different files. And this is really useful when you're deep into programming with an API and something is really complex and you need to look at the include file, and you need to look at the source that you're editing, and you need to look at the library that you're calling to see how all these things fit together. And so you have tabs. And so that's sort of like the top level hierarchy of Vim. You have tabs, and then within a tab you can have windows, and then within a window you can have splits, and then within a split you can have folds, and yeah. So obviously you don't need any of that, and most of the time I just run a single window with no splits and no tabs, no folds, but there it is. So I'm, again, help tab pages, they're there. And then if you find that you really like your setup, you have views, which will save all of your settings. And then you have sessions, which will save all of your views. So a view is a collection of settings that apply to one window. And a session keeps the views for all windows plus the global settings. And this sort of puts the whole thing into a book, where now you have your sessions, which keeps your tabs, and your views, which keeps your windows, and your folds and your splits, and all the various modes that you've got set and the macros you've got defined. I have never ever had a chance to use any of this, but it's there. All right, now Vim can read across the network. So Vim will browse with the NetRW. This is a plugin that comes with Vim. And the most useful thing is it allows you to browse directories. Yeah. So if you split a screen and edit dot being the current directory, it gives you a list of files in the current directory and allows you to manipulate them by editing them or deleting them or renaming them or copying them. And so the nice thing about NetRW is it allows you to do that over secure shell. So it also allows you to do it over FTP, HTTP, RCP. Of course, rsync and SCP and SFTP are all secure shell. And DAV for people that are still supporting that. But this is something I've never had an opportunity to use other than just editing the local directory. And so the fact that you can do that just blows me away. So yeah, you can edit a file on another machine. I want to caution you using FTP. It uses .NET-RC, and that is not secure. FTP passwords go out in the clear. So normally one wouldn't use FTP, but the secure shell stuff works. All right, insert completion. Yep, Vim is smart enough to be able to find words to type for you. If you're programming, this can be useful because it has a way of knowing what words you're using in code. If you're writing text, it can be useful because it can use the words in your current file. So while you're typing, you can do Control-N and Control-P, and it'll find a word for you and fill it in as if you typed it. It searches for those words in the current file in this order, and other windows you have open, in hidden buffers, in inactive buffers, in tags, and in # includes, which is useful for C programming. I don't know if it would do imports from Python, probably not. My guess is that somebody's working on that somewhere. And so it also has specific things that it will complete, like file names or macro definitions or words from a dictionary or words from a thesaurus or words from tags. So obviously file names is going to be useful. So you can complete file names by doing Control X, Control F, and it's going to give you a list of file names. Plugins. Now, plugins are a book in themselves. I think there are literally books on plugins. I use the autosave plugin because I found that useful in not having to write things out before I make them. I edit, I make, I edit, I make. So I don't have to think to write it. I just edit and make. And this is the way I added this to my VimRC. Just following the directions. Now, Vim is smart enough to do this. This is basically scripting the set call plugin. But you know, there's a lot more to Vim scripting in this, and I didn't even want to get into that. But I do use the autosave. I'm really fairly a basic user. The sorts of things I do is I do a lot of motion commands. I interactively sort, I lines, I'll bring in the current date, I'll format. I showed you the mapk.n. Regular expressions are always fun. This is a regular expression to swap two columns. I use tags. I put this entire presentation in markup, in Markdown, in GitLab, and then I formatted it in GitLab, and so it's available formatted in both HTML and PDF. And that's my email address. And at this point, I'm about talked out. 30. That's 90 minutes. Not bad. So I'm going to stop sharing, and hopefully everybody, I should probably leave that slide up for a little while. I don't know. What do you think, John? I see 36 participants.
John, if you're talking, you're on mute.
Okay, John's on mute. I'll leave that slide up for a little while. We can talk. Let me just share that.
Who, me or Kennedy?
I'm sorry, I was downstairs getting water. What did I miss?
Nothing. I'm just going to share that screen. I got to the end, and I basically am just going to share the final screen. And when I do that, my chat window goes away, so I'm not.
Okay.
I'm not able to type.
And so you guys know, if you go to NoVaLUG.org, these slides will be available there. So you'll be able to see them. And so does anyone else have any further questions?
John.
All right, well, if I stop sharing,
This is Roger. I'll emphasize it's .org.
Oh, sorry, yes, NoVaLUG.org.
yeah, okay. I'm going to stop sharing so I can see the chat.
All right. And since there don't appear to be any questions, I'm going to launch a really quick poll just to see who. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording, and then I'm going to launch a quick poll for our breakout.
Hey, John, wait a minute. We need to give him applause.
Wow, thank you much. That's a first.
Applause.
Wow.
All right.